Welcome to the Digital Egghead lesson on selection tools. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the various selection tools, what options are available with those tools, and what they can be used for. The first selection tool that we'll cover will be the rectangular marquee tool. The rectangular marquee tool lets you make selections of a rectangular area any size or aspect ratio. So you can see it gives you a crosshairs here. I can just drag and make a box over anything I want. If you hold the Shift key down while you're doing that, it will constrain proportions so that you have a perfectly proportional 1-to-1 aspect ratio square. If you don't hold the Shift key down, you can make any shape of rectangle that you want. The options available for the rectangular marquee tool include the New, Add, Subtract, and Intersection options. Now I'll demonstrate what those do for you. When you start with the New selection, anytime you make a selection, you click and drag, you have a new rectangular marquee selection. Once you've got a selection, if you choose Add to selection, you will be able to keep the selection that you currently have and then make another selection, and it will add to what you've already selected. Much like that, if you go to the Subtract, it does exactly the opposite. Maybe you selected too much. You can just subtract that off of there. Now you have a little more refined selection for what you're trying to get. You could also hold the Shift key to add or the Alt key to subtract instead of clicking on these options at the top. That also works from within inside the selection. You could select or subtract like that, and now I have kind of an outline selection. To show you what that looks like, I will copy and paste, and you can see I've got just the outline of the around the plate. Okay, undo that. And the last option is the Intersect option. And what that'll do is when you have a selection and you choose the intersection, it will grab only the area that the two selections you have are intersecting. So you can see right now I'm coming in from the upper right, and they are intersecting in a little box right here. That box, as it grows bigger, that becomes my new selection. So you can see wherever I choose as the intersection, that'll be your new selection. Once you have any selection that you want, you go back to the New option, you can move your box around. Move your selection around to be a little bit more precise. Okay. The next option that we have available is the Feather option. Feathering, much like the tooltip says right here, when you roll over, you can see it says softens the edge of the selection. And we spoke a little bit about feathering in an earlier lesson. What that does now is if we preset feathering, we can set to 5. And then when we go and make our new selection, it's going to have a feathered edge of 5 around this, meaning that there is not a hard edge at the lines here. When I copy and paste, I'll take away the background, zoom in. Actually, I'll make a new layer so you can see even better. Oops. you can see here the edge is feathered. And if I went back, and I grab another one, except without feathering, turn this off, move this over, and you can see the new selection has a perfectly hard edge. So that is what feathering does for you. The more you feather, the more the edge will blur out. And the next option we have is the style option. The style just has a couple of different things. You have normal, fixed ratio, and fixed size. Normal is what we've been doing, where you kind of just have any control over what you're selecting that you want. If you choose fixed ratio, maybe you know you have a specific size of selection you want to have ahead of time. As far as an aspect ratio, 1:1, 1:2. So if I go with a 1:1, you can see width is 1, height is 1. It is constrained to making a perfect 1:1 box, which is what you could also do simply by holding this shift key. But maybe I want a 1:3 where it's going to be rectangular, but it's going to be taller. So it will keep it with an aspect ratio where it's 1 across to 3 down. Or vice versa, you can do 3 across to 1 down. And now I can make a rectangular selection specifically to that size, the opposite direction. And you can use any aspect ratio you want here. This is if you know what your aspect ratio is ahead of time. Back to normal. The last option that we have is refine edge. Refine edge is a complex and powerful tool, and it's really going to need a lesson of its own. So I will do that, but for now I'll show you just what it does, kind of from a basic perspective. You come in here and it masks out, or it removes all the other parts of the image and just lets you focus on what you have selected. Gives you a few different options of views that you have. You could do it against black or against white, whichever you find to be most helpful, or overlay it so you can see the rest of the image but still what you have selected. You have a couple options to show radius and original, which don't apply to this particular selection. Edge detection, you can adjust the edge, you can add feathering now after the fact. Contrast, shift edge. Now this really is useful for complex selections. Not really not so much for the rectangular marquee tool, but more for things like hair or grass or flowers and weeds and things. I don't know, things that have complex edges that aren't smooth. That's where you're going to really come in here and use the refine edge tool. So we'll talk about that again a little bit later, but not so much in this lesson. Feel free to play around with it and see what you can see when you come in here, and ask any questions you want, but just know that I will cover this at another time. And those are all the options for the rectangular marquee. The next one that we have, the single row and single column. I'm going to skip the elliptical for right now and come right back to it, just because the row and column I feel are more related to the rectangular one because they have hard edges. Single row, exactly what it sounds like. You can select a single row of pixels, and that's it. You look at the options, you have most of the same options as you had with the rectangular marquee tool. Single column, the exact same thing, but as a column. One column of pixels. This could be used to trim off one single column to just kind of tighten up an image, or a single row, or whatever you need to do. Then we have the elliptical marquee tool. Elliptical marquee tool works a lot like the rectangular marquee tool in the sense that you can make an ellipse of any shape you want or any aspect ratio that you want. Or if you hold the Shift key, you will make a perfect circle. Now I can cut out this plate and paste another one. That's not a very precise or pretty circle because it's obviously got darker shades of the table under it, but you can see that's essentially what the elliptical marquee tool does. When you look at the options for the elliptical marquee tool, you have all the same options as the rectangular marquee tool. You can make a circle, you can add to the circle however you need to, you can subtract from the circle, and then you can do an intersection of the circle. Then you have feather, which does the exact same thing as for the other selection tools. The biggest difference I want you to see is that now you have anti-alias available to you. And this is why I covered what anti-alias is in a previous lesson. So that you know when you have this checked, you're going to have smoother edges. If you uncheck it, and then you copy your selection and paste it, you're going to have a little bit more jagged edges. Usually you want to keep that checked. The rest of the stuff is the same thing as the rectangular. You can do an aspect ratio where it controls your selection, so it's always that same aspect ratio. Or make it a specific size. I want a 100 pixel by 64 pixel circle, which isn't very big in this image, but you can control that. Once you have your selection, you can refine the edge. And that's all there is for the marquee tools. Let me know if you felt like this was useful or have any thoughts. See you in the next lesson.